Over another in her dead, a modern theater. Picasso's painting put a human face on the horror of war and threw a stark light on the brutality of pain. To this day, Guernica remains the iconic depiction of fascist humanity.
I think he stays quite busy these days.
For everybody that's joined us on Zoom, we're a few minutes late getting started, waiting on a quorum, so we'll get started here in just a moment. Ready.
Second. Hey, second, I want you to write this down.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. If you're dialed in on the telephone, a reminder to press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If you're on the Zoom application, you should see on the screen a place to raise your hand and unmute whenever you're called on. there any staff or trustee addition or deletions to the agenda or consent agenda?
Staff has no changes, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda. Second.
A motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries. Public comments, Ms. Limley.
I'll keep it short. Just keep in mind what I've said for the last decade on the authority. If you have any questions, ask Dale. But the other thing, the board does need to consider disposing of the 2 lots that Jack bought at a tax certificate sale if somebody would buy them. I think he bought them as a favor to a friend because the guy had the tax certificates. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, they're behind the metal building. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Limley. Are there any comments from anybody called in or with us on Zoom? Not seeing any. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries. New business, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a few items for the trustees. The first is a request to approve resolution number 2021-004. This is an extension of the existing state of emergency and the chairman's right to extend that by proclamation. We ask your approval.
Make a motion to approve Lake Shore Hospital Authority Resolution number 2021-004 as stated. Second. Reading it.
Motion by Dr. Thompson. A second by Ms. Chancey. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries.
And of course, Mr. Chairman, in accordance with the last resolution, there have been proclamations covering the periods of February 12th through March 11th. And we would ask for trustee approval of those also.
Motion to approve the proclamations covering the period February 12th, 2021 through March 11th, 2021 as stated.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries.
As I have in the past, we have updated the transition plan. This is a document which I'm trying to provide at each meeting where the trustees will have a sense of what is going on as it relates to the facility, Lake Shore facility. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Obviously, you can ask at any time. But we just want to make sure that we publish this where it gives the public an opportunity to look at it as well as make this information available to you.
Are there any questions or comments on the update? Ms. Williams.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, trustees, back on April the 26th of last year, 2020, CHS provided services, and those services were provided to an individual which qualified within the 90-day period to bill the authority. For whatever reason, they never did bill. And I guess as part of their continuing follow-up, continuing closeout, they found this particular charge that had never been billed to the authority. And they are asking that you consider paying it. Now, when it was first presented, I denied it for the simple reason it was completely without or outside the scope at that time. But I did make the opportunity available to present it to the trustees, which is why it's on the agenda. But it would be in the amount of $1,768.38. The total bill at that time was $10,949.71. But again, had they billed it within the 90-day period from which services were first rendered, this would have been a non-discussion. But they found it as part of their overall closeout and have submitted it with a cover letter asking for payment.
This is after the 90 days?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would say based on what insurance companies do, that this should not be paid. Insurance companies will not pay for something from the previous year before October. This obviously was before October. And this has not been submitted until this calendar year. I'm sure you're aware of that. So I think this is just one of those things where they have to swallow it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Fred, is there anything from your perspective in regards to paying or not paying this bill that we're obliged to pay, or legally or not legally?
You have an obligation to pay it, assuming you received the benefit of the bargain. I'm trying to think of the statute of limitations on it. It would depend on what the prospective creditor, what they would argue there.
You want to like give us?
Mr. Williams, has there been any contact with them as to what their position is?
No, CHS retained a local person who is working on various issues involving the hospital. They are the ones that reached out to us. Actually, they spoke to the staff, the other staff, but basically what they said is, look, we found this in review. It should have been billed long ago, and if we can get paid for it, we'd like to be paid for it.
Excuse me, don't we have a thing for 90 days within our
We do.
submission thing?
Yes, that was in
And
the
they
agreement,
agreed
which
to
no
that.
longer exists, but that's correct.
They agreed to that while they were leasing the hospital. And this occurred while they were leasing the hospital. And it's long after the 90 days that they agreed to.
Yeah,
Yes, if CHS, and Ms. Laurie is absolutely correct, if CHS were still in business, this would no longer be a valid bill because the lease said they have to bill it within the 90-day period, which they failed to do.
And is it possible to table this? Because I'd just like to hear Fred's opinion. I totally agree with what she's saying, but I would like to hear Fred's opinion, and it might, give him some time to look that up.
There's absolutely no rush one way or the other on the part of the authority. So if you would like for Fred to look at it, that is perfectly fine.
Can you render?
I would like to look at a couple of legal issues here, and no matter what, Ms. Chauncey's position can always be taken at the next meeting if you want to still take that position. And I can think of betterment and a couple other legal concepts that I'd like to take a look at, the 90-day provision and a couple of other issues because it's going to be an absolute position. It's not going to be it's not going to be a gray area.
So do you want to make a motion that we table this and get a legal opinion from Fred, understanding Mr. Chancey's opinion, which I agree with, but I'd like to get a legal opinion too.
I think if we're asking Fred to render an opinion, you should put that in the form of a motion. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we ask Fred to look up the legal ramifications of this and maybe some case law as examples.
It might cost $500 to spend $1,700.
At a minimum.
Well, if we pay the 1,700, are we setting some sort of a precedent?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's look at that, because I don't want a bunch more of these to crop up.
You know, we get the next one. that comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we had if we had a hard and fast for the 90 days. I'd second.
Got a motion and a second to table and ask Mr. Coberline to do some research and give us an opinion by the next meeting. Any further discussion?
The only thing I've got to say is if what I said doesn't hold true, every doctor in town is going to want a copy of it. Okay?
The authority
No,
to
but I think
sell
the
it to
point's
get
well
that
taken.
$500.
We open-
I don't want to do that.
Past the 90 days, you know, so we should kind of put a fence on this.
I'd prefer the fence stay at 90, but whatever.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm thinking.
I mean, that's what we hold the doctors that we pay to,
But my client told me to.
you know?
Usually once the CO's done, they're bye.
Yeah.
Let's just get all the information and then we can table.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Hi.
All opposed, that motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, trustees, the next item, the authority's general liability insurance renews on April 1st. And you may recall that after the closure of CHS, our current carrier was willing to add the general liability exposure to our then current policy, but they clearly said, look, when the policy renews, we will not renew with you because these are exposures that we typically do not insure. So FMIT, the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, which is who we broker with, has gone out in the marketplace and they have obtained 3 quotes from different carriers for which to provide the general liability for both the authority and those facilities that we call Lakeshore. Having done that, there was a summary sheet which was made part of your agenda packet. And what I did is I initially looked at the lowest cost policy, and then I looked at the covenants and restrictions of that policy and kind of worked my way up. But I also met and discussed this with Fred, where Fred could put, his opinion on these particular caveats and provisions within the policy. After having reviewed this and after having discussed this with Fred, he and I both are of the agreement that the actual lowest cost proposal, which would be placing the coverage with the James River Insurance Company, is actually our best and most reasonable option. That premium is $23,900 a year, which is actually less than what we paid for authority plus the added liability coverage had we annualized it for an entire year. So the subjectivities to binding this coverage, which I was a little bit concerned about, were not the same concern of Fred's. He didn't see those as being the same obstacle that I did. And after his explanation, I have no reason to disagree. So we're actually asking that of the 3 quotes, the trustees approve the James River Insurance Company, which is the low quote. And we will place this coverage by April 1st.
Is that quote in here?
It is.
Yes.
Like on page 2 of that summary sheet,
With claim deed or is that?
No, very back.
In the
of
very end.
packet, almost.
I didn't even realize assault and battery was a thing you could insure for, and I can see here that there's a rider for the security company, so that makes me feel better. Just out of the blue, I got some friends over in Gainesville that had a murder happen on their property, and they have to pump out all this GNL policy and stuff like that. Is that covered under assault and battery?
No, no, sir. Assault and battery is, well, no, sir. That would be covered under general liability.
General liability?
Yes.
Okay.
Assault and battery is where one of our employees, like Mr. Williams, sees somebody and chases them down. Because they're off their brakes and he catches them.
Gotcha.
And then he does something that he's inclined to do based on his mixed martial arts abilities. And he actually batters.
Okay.
Me running down the road is a crime in itself.
That's interesting.
Not a great example because the insurer probably would cover that just out of entertainment. But I think you get the point.
Yeah, I get it.
You need a motion, correct?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we approve the quote from James River General Liability Corporation. James Rivers General Liability quote. Sorry.
Second.
Got a motion in a second. Mr. Williams, do you recall offhand what we're currently paying or what we were
I
paying?
put it in there.
Yeah.
Well, I put it in here, Mr. Chairman.
It may have been,
I certainly intended to. Well, I don't see that anymore. I will get that for you, Mr. Chairman. We do have it. And I do know that once you expand it to cover an entire year, it was actually more.
okay. We got a motion in a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Staff report is included in your packet. If there's any questions on that. And we'll move on to board member comments, Ms. Chancey.
I would like to ask, is there a possibility that we will be renting out office space in our 2 adjacent buildings?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have no comments.
Fred, you have anything to add?
I do not.
Ready to
Douglas?
get this thing solved, ready to hear the 2 other presentations so we can cover insurance
24,
costs.
24. This is the next one.
ACE Medical will be giving their presentation on the 24th at 5:15 in this building on the 2nd floor, I believe.
Correct.
What's the next one? What's the one? You said 2.
Shands.
And which I have a meeting with Shands Friday. And hopefully I should know something Friday in which to share with the trustees. If I may too, Mr. Chairman, we've discussed the status of our employees with Lakeshore. As you have been told, they were hired on a temporary full-time basis, primarily for the reasons of retirement and what's required of the Florida retirement system. We are in the process of working with those employees and what we may do in the event they need to go beyond the end of March. I'll be issuing you some form of communication explaining what that status may be very soon. But I think we've pretty much got the solution worked out. I have to have some conversation with Fred, and we possibly have to have a call with FRS, but I think we got it worked out.
Is Dendy still sticking around?
Well, we hope so. I mean, Dendy is the key to that operation. I make no bones about that. It don't run without Dendy.
He kind of needs to come with the building.
Have there been any issues reported to you of anything, leaks, this, that?
Oh, yes, sir. And in fact, for the whole time this facility has been not operational as a hospital, all of those minor things that were occurring that, you know, due to lack of maintenance, they've worked on. I mean, they're there physically, and so they just took the initiative and did a lot of that corrective work.
So they're maintaining the building. in
Absolutely.
best shape as they can.
Yeah. If you've been, I know Miss Laurie has, but if you've been to those equipment rooms and all, I mean, I think they look as good as they've looked since I've been here. They look really, really good.
I was impressed that they were actually clean.
Were they not?
And many times when you go into equipment rooms like that, I'm sure
Oh, yeah.
Stephen can attest to that.
Nastiest thing.
They're not really clean.
Well, they got stuff to do. They're probably doing Danny's probably doing his wish list right now, like trying to get stuff fixed that's never been. But I mean, I say the wish list, trust me, it's the things that you never get 2 hours to go take time to fix.
Well, you know, I'm a lay person, but certainly I didn't see scale in any of the chillers.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I didn't see a bunch of leaves built up there behind that evaporator. I didn't see any of that. You know, to an untrained eye, it looked extremely good to me. And I do know that there were things that were problematic before the closure, which have now been cured and corrected. So, you know, that's a attaboy Dendy, because they're the ones that did that.
Well, one of the things that I'm impressed with is Demi was able to identify exactly where the problems existed. And talking to the public, people will say, oh, well, did you know this, that, and the other thing? But Demi knew exactly where the problems were. And he wanted to address them, but when the hospital was occupied, he didn't have the time to do that. And the one thing that I think, if we do have a prospective leasee, or we do whatever we're going to do, and we're going to utilize the building, the floors in front of the elevator and where the entranceway are, they're tile now. And people tend to believe that they're dirty. They're not dirty, they're stained. So those will have to be replaced, but that's not something to do at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, that's why many hospitals have like brown tile or black tile, or, you know, you do what you can to hide it.
Well, for what it's worth, Sonia and Cynthia, of course, have been using that crew to do maintenance here when required. I mean, there's no need to go out and use our contractual people. They just call and they come down and take care of these issues too. So.
And coming into the meeting tonight, I did see one of the security guards walking a perimeter. So.
All right. Any other comments? We've exhausted the agenda, so I will entertain a motion for adjournment. All right, adjourn.